Hey everybody, how you doing? Welcome to another episode of the I Just Want This Done Divorce Podcast. We got a TV judge and his wife just called off their divorce after almost 2 years of battling in court. And what you talking about, Willis? The star of Diff'rent Strokes finally pulled the trigger on a split with his wife. We'll talk about that. And Halle Berry engaged for marriage number 4. Fourth time is the charm. Once she said yes. So we'll hear more about that. In the science corner, is Ozempic causing divorce? And will taking your husband's last name prevent divorce? We're going to find out. Welcome to another episode of I Just Want This Done, not just another boring divorce lawyer podcast. Roll the cool music. Welcome to the show, everybody. Ladies and gentlemen, Rayford Palmer, Rahul, I are coming at you live and worldwide. And our show, as you know, drops every Friday after it's recorded. And it goes live on Thursdays, typically, as long as Rahul's not too busy in court.
That's right.
And then we typically do it on Fridays. So he did have court today, but we made it back in time to put the thing on live. So here we go. Rahul, so post-tax day, I'm enjoying my lighter wallet.
Yes, it's definitely a few days of ramen here before going back to the regular food programming, you know?
Correct. And spring is in full swing. You've got thunderstorms. I've got sunshine, and we're about 15, 20 miles apart. That's Chicago, folks, this time of year. So wanted to just mention STG Divorce Law is our firm in Chicago and in the surrounding suburbs. STG Divorce Law is how smart, successful people get divorced in Chicagoland at stglawfirm.com or stgdivorcelaw.com. Rahul and I are divorce lawyers. We've been lawyers for quite a long time doing family law and divorce work in the Chicagoland area. And we have this awesome show that we've been enjoying. And if you're new to the show, we talk about topics that are entertaining, but also informative. So we talk about divorce, prenups, weddings, engagements, celeb divorce, all those kind of things. And we try to explain them in a way that makes sense to people because the press frequently gets it wrong. And then we talk about Legal Corner, where we talk about developments in divorce law that are interesting. And we try to keep it light and interesting rather than just talk about child support for an hour where nobody would watch the show except our moms. So that's what that's about. Thank you very much. And without any further ado, Rahul, let's talk about our favorite TV judge called off the divorce, right?
That's right. So usually people hear about filing for divorce. In this case, it's actually the opposite. Well, I mean, they filed, but now it's being called off. So Judge Mathis, everybody knows or should know of Judge Mathis. He's a longtime TV judge. I think it's from 1999 to 2023.
It's like decades.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think now it's called Mathis Court with Judge Mathis. So 39 years ago, him and his wife, Linda Reese Mathis, were married. And after that decades-long marriage, in July of 2024, they separated. And then August, Linda, his spouse, filed for divorce, August of 2024, citing, as we always talk about, irreconcilable differences, because, again, that's usually the only ground for filing in many, if not most, jurisdictions in the United States. So that's just what you need to say, like we previously talked about. So that started. And then, however, by November 2024, they were back together. And they went on a Tamron Hall show together to talk about surviving their split. And he meaning Judge Mathis, said on the show that the separation was as devastating as when he lost his mother. So that talks about the impact the separation had. And then just now, maybe a week ago, Linda, who was the petitioner, filed a request to dismiss the divorce, quote unquote, without prejudice. And then a day later, on April 8th, the court clerk entered the dismissal and the case is officially done.
And this is from a TMZ story. Links for all the stories are in the show notes for you folks.
So they're back together, divorce is off, and hopefully this is it. No more bumps along the way. So this is interesting because, of course, it has to do with a TV personality that most people know. It's legally adjacent because he obviously plays a judge on TV. Is he a judge in real life? I mean, he must be a lawyer in real life, I would think.
A lot of these folks were like various types of judges. Judge Mathis, let's see. Let's trust Google. Yes, former Michigan District Court judge.
Yeah, there you go. Yeah. So anyway, why is this important for us? I mean, we're always the pigs in a blanket model here. So, it's an entertaining story, but where's the meat? Where's the pig in this blanket? So basically, it's a dismissal without prejudice. What does that mean? Basically, it means that anyone can refile for divorce if things unfortunately fall apart in the future. If you dismiss something without prejudice, prejudice basically means you can ask for it again in the future if you need to.
Yeah, well, dismissal with prejudice means you can't ever come back on this particular case. And there's time limitations in Illinois. Once you get a dismissal without prejudice, I believe you have 1 or 2 years, I don't recall, within which to refile the case. What's interesting about divorce, though, is there's no statute of limitations. So I just sort of thought it kind of doesn't matter because you can refile a divorce case again, and it isn't like you lose the claim.
It's like in a personal injury case, or if you got into a car accident and you dismiss it with prejudice because either you don't have a case or because you reach a settlement, you can't come back to court and ask about that same claim again. However, in divorce, obviously it's against public policy to be able to not ever ask for divorce again. But Ray, if you were in that personal injury world for a while, so you can maybe chime in on that.
Dismissals without prejudice were frequently done. First of all, a court might do it as a sanction, as like a form of punishment. And you still get a chance to refile. Like if your complaint was dismissed, if it was improperly put together, you could get dismissed and be allowed to refile. The other time a case could be dismissed without prejudice would be that a plaintiff decided to dismiss their case usually on a discovery basis. They wanted to get more information or regroup for some reason in their case and revisit it. So they dismiss it without prejudice and with leave to refile. And it allows them to refile their case later. But the clock does run. I think it's a year and in Illinois. And they have to keep an eye on that because it will act like a statute of limitations if they do it. So sometimes people would file strategically to protect the statute of limitations. So let's say that in Illinois, it's 2 years from the date of a car accident. They might file right before that 2-year date and then conduct some more investigation, dismiss it, conduct investigation, and then refile. So there are some strategic reasons why you want to do it. In divorce, it really is irrelevant. However, one thing I want to mention is this. When people say to us in divorce cases, they get a case filed against them, we always tell them to do a counter-petition, right, Rahul? And the rationale for that, Rahul, is because they could dismiss the case. So theoretically, if things didn't go well, I had this happen in one case where my client refused to file a counter-petition on religious reasons, and I respected that. Well, we started putting the heat on in the case and discovering all kinds of financial information this guy was hoping to hide, and he non-suited and dismissed his case, which he's free to do, and then there's no divorce. You're still married. So we always advise people to file a counter-petition, which is a divorce petition going the other way, which means if they get rid of theirs, you still have yours, and the case continues on.
Yep.
So this kind of game can be played, at least in Illinois. So it's something to be aware of.
Absolutely. And, it's important to say, just because someone files for divorce, again, this is a good illustration on that concept, doesn't mean you're getting divorced, in the sense that if there's still hope and the two parties are working towards some sort of reconciliation, it's still possible. I think, what would you say, Rafe? It's like a 5 to 10% of cases, or I would say 5 to 7% of cases in Illinois, maybe even 10% reconcile.
I don't know it'd be interesting to know the stats of like dismissals and people reconcile. In my experience, my personal anecdotal experience, it's very small. But, we're already seeing people that are down the road quite a bit when they come see us. There are always the ones where, we don't know the ones where they just never show up. They talk about divorce. They're thinking about getting divorced, and then nobody files. Nobody comes to talk to a lawyer, or one side does and the other party doesn't. So we don't know the ones that sort of don't happen. But reconciliation, pretty, like you said, fairly narrow.
Yeah, it's fairly narrow. And it's important to also, so if you reconcile and it's a 39-year marriage, you want to know, one question you'd want to ask yourself is, do I want any sort of financial protection? If so, one thing that people should consider is doing a postnuptial agreement. I think we talked about this in a prior episode in some level of detail, but essentially, a postnuptial agreement is similar to a prenuptial agreement, although not quite. It's got a few very important distinctions that set it apart from a prenuptial agreement, including the basis under which it's governed. For example, in Illinois, the prenuptial agreement is governed, or a premarital agreement is governed under the Uniform Premarital Agreement Act that's codified under Illinois statute. A postnuptial agreement is not codified under that. So you kind of have to go with what contract law and case law really say about it. You also, one other very big important, we could talk about other distinctions, but another big distinction is how a court considers the equity of an agreement. A premarital agreement's fairness, if you want to call it, or equity, is considered at the time of signing, meaning, was this equitable and contracted to between the parties at the time of signing? And if it was good then, it's probably good now. And a postnuptial agreement, that's the equity is considered at the time of the divorce. So is this fair at the time of divorce? So reason you would get into a postnup is you can say, after 39 years of marriage, for example, this is how, in the event this happens again, we're not going to have some long protracted litigation. We're going to say, I get this, you get this. This is what we do. We go our separate ways. I mean, probably not going to be kids or minors at that age if your marriage is that long. But even if there are, that's one thing you can't contract for. So you'll still have to go to court regarding the kids if you can't agree. But otherwise, I think having some terms and conditions on how a divorce would go from a financial position can take out the uncertainty and maybe even strengthen your relationship, because no one's in it for the money.
Yeah, we've seen postnups. I had never seen one for the several years I'd started doing divorce work. And then I'd say in the last 10 years, I started seeing interest in them. People in this situation, they get back together, reconciling. One spouse usually feels more comfortable with some kind of assurances that of some protections, because they figure, if I'm unwinding this divorce case and I'm going to trust them, I need some assurances that if things don't go well, because things are already kind of cracked at the foundation a little bit, I need some protection. And usually it's the less financially well-off spouse. And that's typically what we've seen. And it's still rare, but it does occur. So that's a good point. The interesting thing about a postnup is I always tell people it's really two things. It's a prenup, meaning what happens if we get divorced. So it deals with that in a way. And then Rahul talked about why it's not exactly like a prenup. Then it's also a during nup, which is what happens with our money while we're married. And some people will create non-marital assets or isolate them and clarify them and say, hey, while we're still married, X is yours, Y is mine, and we're going to share ABC expenses.
Right.
And your income we're going to deal with the thus and so, and my income's going to go this way. And people hash out how they're going to deal financially while they're still married. So it's a two-parter, which is why postnups are more expensive than prenups, because we're doing two things, two large projects really. And like Rahul said, a postnup is more intricate than a prenup. There are more requirements.
Absolutely. Because a lot of times the misnomer becomes a prenup's just a postnup you sign after the marriage.
Yeah.
So stay away from that. That is not exactly what a postnup is. Very, very important that you don't think that.
I had a client who was going to do a prenup with us, and his fiancé was like hesitant and said, I'll sign something after we're married. And I warned him, and I put it in writing, and I said, your hands are going to be tied after you're married, because all these legal rights accrue the minute you get married. That person's entitled to half of the marital estate, or, equitable share of the marital estate, maintenance, all this other stuff. And as soon as they get those guarantees, literally that minute, now you're negotiating against that. And, now you have to respect that, as Rahul said. So the difficulty level, you're playing on hard mode once you, as the kids say, once you go up there. So just be advised, don't think, oh yeah, we'll wait till after the wedding and then we'll deal with the prenup. It doesn't work like that. It's a whole different ballgame after you get married, and much more challenging. So, okay. Anything else on that one?
No, I think that's great.
Next one. What you talking about, Willis? Those of you fondly remember Todd Bridges from Diff'rent Strokes. When I was a kid, that was a big show on TV. And he was the older brother, played the older brother on the show. And he finally filed for divorce 3 months after telling us he was going to, basically telegraphing it. And in episode 50, we talked about this possibility. The news is on TMZ now. Links are in the show notes. He's filing for divorce. As they said in the story, the Diff'rent Strokes star beelined it to court Tuesday. I don't think he beelined it. Probably the law clerk from the law firm, or better yet, somebody clicked a button and e-filed, electronically filed the petition. I doubt he rushed in there and went over there and stood in line with the clerk's office. He's like, I want those file stamp copies, man. So after 3 years of marriage, and this was a whirlwind. TMZ reported this split 3 months ago. According to legal documents obtained by People, Good Work People magazine, Todd claims the marriage is irretrievably broken. Shocker. This is what they always say. We've told you this many, many times. Interestingly enough, neither he nor his wife, Betty Jo, are requesting maintenance or spousal support. They were married in September 2022. having a low-key Beverly Hills ceremony with 70 guests. Okay, low-key. They didn't say it was a secret wedding, so that's good. Wasn't a destination wedding. So most of the, scoring that we have, we're not finding against them. Didn't have any children, and they did meet in a dating app, Rahul, 9 months before the wedding, a bit short. However, they got engaged 6 months later. We've talked about reasonable engagement. They didn't go too long with the engagement. Did they go too short? Todd, would you like to come on the show? We'd be happy to interview you and ask you why the divorce is happening. So we will share screen and show you. See, you folks remember Todd Bridges. There he is with the arrow pointed at him. Thank you, TMZ. Whatever happened to this young lady who played the sister? Anyway, that's it for that. We'll see. It sounds like it's going to be amicable, so good on them. Announcing the divorce and then files a typical, pattern for the celebs. That's pretty typical. They telegraphed it. And, a short marriage is typically easier to handle emotionally, not necessarily, but there's usually fewer assets. In this case, no support, no children. This is going to be really what we call a walk away. They filed in Arizona, which is a community property state. We've talked about that before. Assets acquired during marriage are split equally by default in Arizona. 9 months from match to wedding is quick. They're older. They know what they're doing. A prenup probably would have been smart. There's no mention of one. Didn't see one mentioned. If you're publicly separated for a few months without filing, do talk to a lawyer. Don't do this without talking to a divorce lawyer. And folks, don't trust ChatGPT with this stuff. There's all kinds of stuff about hallucinations with AI getting legal incorrect, and lawyers are getting in trouble all over the place for screwing up with AI. So AI is not ready for prime time to be your lawyer. We're not trying to protect our jobs or anything. We use AI tools, but we review all the results and we screen them to make sure the stuff's correct, because it can make up things and it gets things wrong. And it sounds very convincing because AI is designed to please you. So be careful. Talk to a licensed attorney. The other thing that's important to note, that I haven't said this in the pod before, if you put legal stuff into a public or general AI tool, Claude, Grok, ChatGPT, the courts are holding now that you're waiving your attorney-client privilege, and your chats with your AI tool can be discovered and then published, and the court will read them. If you take a communicate, and just from your lawyer doesn't make it safe. If you take emails from your attorney and you put that into ChatGPT to ask about it, now you've waived your privilege because of ChatGPT's terms of service and other reasons, and the other lawyer can get their hands on that in discovery and then publish it, and the judge can see it. So don't do that. Let your lawyer do that homework for you. That's what lawyers are for. So they're the safe person to talk to because you're protected by attorney-client privilege. Okay, tell us about Halle Berry. Halle's been around a while. She's a big star. What's the scoop with Halle?
Yeah, absolutely. So Halle Berry is 59 and confirmed during a February 5th, 2026 appearance on the Jimmy Fallon show, The Tonight Show starring Jimmy Fallon, that she is now engaged to longtime boyfriend Van Hunt, who is a musician.
Let's look up. I'm looking up Van Hunt.
Look up Van Hunt. I can't say I've heard of him, but they've been together actually apparently for almost 6 years, since 2020. And according to this E! Online article,
Van Hunt, born 1970, debut album Van Hunt, appropriately named eponymous, in 2004.
Gave himself a van. So
Grammy Award. All right. Go ahead. Sorry.
Yeah, absolutely. So there was apparently some confusion that she cleared up, saying that he had asked her to marry him and she said no. And so she clarified that I did not say no. We just don't have a date. But of course I said yes, I would marry him. Now, this is Halle Berry's fourth, marriage if it happens. She's been married 3 times before: David Justice, Eric Bennett or Benet, and Olivier Martinez. And so, the last one was apparently a notoriously messy, high-profile divorce with a decade-long custody battle. I don't know. That's sort of what some initial research is showing, but we'll confirm if that's correct or inaccurate. So, you know what they say. We just talked about some red flags on the previous one. 6-year dating relationship. What about that for a red flag? I wish them the best, by the way. We wish them the best, of course. But, you know what they say, fool me once,
Shame on you. If fool me, we can't get fooled again.
You can't get fooled again. But, hopefully they'll hear the wedding bells soon. Exactly. And they look good together. They look real good. And then, here's the thing though, the whole, we don't have a date, but of course I said, yes, I would marry him. So dating for 6 years, he has to marry me. I didn't say no, we don't have a date. So Rahul, another red flag, right?
Yep, that's right. Why is there's no wedding date? There's some confusion about whether she said yes or no, which she didn't say no. We just don't have a date. So it's a lot of us up in the air, but we wish them the best. It's fourth time's a charm. So as they say. We want prenup. Oh yeah. Oh, I'm sure. And then from her historical sort of dealings with this, I'm sure there will be, and I'm sure it's going to be ironclad. They're going to keep their own property, I would guess. He wants his IP, he wants his residuals. She wants to protect what she has from previous marriages and also from what she's already earned.
I quote the great James Tolkien, who recently passed away, star from Top Gun, who played the hard-bitten commander. He said, "Your family name ain't the best in the Navy." That's what he said to Maverick. Well, she's kind of not got the best track record, so he's kind of flying on faith with this one. All right. Anyway, we wish the best for them. We're trying to do like a bit of a Zoo Crew vibe for those of you who grew up in the 80s and 90s, like a wacky, we need like we need a couple more characters in the Zoo Crew for this. 2 of us is enough, but we're trying to have some fun with this so you guys don't get bored. We're
not your average boring divorce podcast. So
that's right. Educate and entertain. Okay. So moving on, we have we got some listener questions.
Yes. So this one, Rafe, is waiting 3 months on an attorney. So I hired an attorney 6 months ago to represent me in my divorce. We've only had 2 substantive conversations in that time. Emails go unanswered for weeks. My case is stalled. I've paid a retainer of $8,000 and don't know what it's been used for. Am I being unreasonable? What's normal and what's not?
In my book, I Just Want This Done, How Smart, Successful People Get Divorced Without Losing Their Kids, Money, and Minds, bestseller on Amazon. In this situation, I have a chapter talking about how to hire the best divorce lawyer and also when to fire your divorce lawyer. If you've waited only 2 conversations in 6 months is insane. Emails being unanswered for weeks, also insane. Case being stalled. Yeah, this is a huge, huge series of red flags. Unfortunately, there are lawyers who are overwhelmed. They take on cases they shouldn't. They take on too many matters and they don't answer their calls. They don't call people back and they don't do client service. And you're right to wonder what's going on. And you don't even know if stuff's getting filed correctly or not. So it's time to get another attorney. And if it's only a short period of time, you're getting concerned, I always say, demand to talk to the lawyer, schedule an actual meeting and go see them face-to-face or Zoom, or at least a phone call to actually have a conversation, not emails back and forth, actual conversation, and set forth your expectations and ask the lawyer, hey, what's reasonable for me to expect from you with respect to communications? And schedule a regular time to talk every week, every 2 weeks, whatever works for you, so you know what's going on in your case. You have a right to be informed. You have a right for your case to be going forward. This is just table stakes for any attorney, much less a divorce attorney dealing with one of the most important things in your life. The lawyer needs to be on top of your case. It's an ethical duty we have to stay on top of your case and keep you reasonably informed. So this is not being unreasonable at all. We had a listener question many episodes ago, maybe 10 or 12, about whether to fire a lawyer on the day of court. And in that case, I said, no, you really need to hang on to them that last time because it's too short of notice to get a new lawyer in. But in that case, you want to get a new lawyer eventually, swap in somebody better who can do the work for you. It's totally reasonable to expect this of your attorney. First of all, one other thing is you should be getting regular billing. And no joke, there are lawyers who haven't billed people for months. Well, that shows a couple of bad things. Their administration in their firm is so poor, they're not even getting their bills out to get paid. So what does that tell? What are their other systems like? If they can't even get paid, if the cash register is broken, how are they paying any of their bills? How are they operating at all as a business? And that's a sign that all kinds of other things are broken in the firm. So if you're not getting billed, if you're not getting calls back from a lawyer, it's a disaster and it's time to run, don't walk. So that's it for that. So Rahul, I'm going to ask you a question about parenting time. And this is interesting. Next show, we're probably going to talk about the advancement of 50-50 mandatory parenting time laws, or at least a presumption, what we call it, of 50-50 parenting time. In Illinois, we don't have that presumption. Fathers' rights groups have promoted these bills, and one didn't pass in the Illinois legislature a few years back. The idea is in Illinois, the judge is allowed to decide based on the best interest of the child what the visitation should be. There is no default 50-50. Just to recap, the trend in Illinois has been towards equal time, but it's not mandatory. It's not the default. And there are people that want to make that the default in Illinois. Well, in other states, 50-50 bills are advancing in those legislatures. So here's a question. Now, people do have equal time in Illinois. Some people have this. My ex and I have equal parenting time. We live in different school districts now that he moved. He wants our daughter to go to his district school because it's better ranked. I want her to stay where she's been since kindergarten. How does a court decide this when time is already equal? Who gets to make the call?
Interesting question. And it comes up actually relatively frequently these days when there is that much more equal parenting time. There is a distinction between equal time and decision-making. Education and school, where the child goes to school, is a decision-making, is a big-ticket decision-making item and not a parenting time issue. So some considerations, what would a court do? It's really hard to tell because every case is so nuanced. You can't just answer that in a vacuum. But a court will look at many different considerations. How much better is the new school district compared to the old school district? How long has a child been in school? She's been here since kindergarten. Is your daughter like in second grade? Or is your daughter in 10th grade? It's very hard to find two schools that are almost very equally ranked and yet in different districts. So how far is one school from the other school and from the parties' houses? Is it substantively or substantially closer or farther away? What makes changing schools in the child's best interest? Those are all things that a court will want to look at.
And Rahul, isn't the court's like weighing all these things like, well, there's a detriment to jerk the kid out of one school, go to another one, right? With friends and teachers. And then, so there's all these kind of pros and cons.
Mm-hmm. Exactly. And so if one school is, let's say, ranked 6 on great schools, and the other school is a 9, then it's I don't want to say it's a slam dunk, but it's what gives a child the most opportunities to be successful in the future while still maintaining some stability. On one hand, you can say pulling the child out of school where she has all her friends, everything, and the schools are just, 8 and 9 respectively. It's not that much of a difference. There's no reason to sort of jerk this whole thing around. Dad decided he wanted to move when everything was going fine. We were all in the same school district until he decided he wanted to move. So why should now the child, pay the consequence of that? On the other hand, you can say, well, the child has her friends. She's going to keep hanging out with those friends because she still lives there half the time, and those friends aren't going anywhere. The only thing she's doing differently is she's going to a school that's significantly better, that's going to set her up for further success in the future, open up more opportunities for extracurricular activities, more programs for school. Maybe there's special IEPs the child might need. There's special gifted programs. There's all kinds of things, right? So those are all things that a court will want to look at. So, it's very hard to sort of just answer that as what will a court do, but we don't know what a court would do, but a court will weigh those factors and other factors that are in the child's best interest to determine where the child goes to school. And more likely than not, there will be a guardian ad litem appointed to basically do research and figure all this stuff out as a part of this discussion.
All right. That's cool. Yeah. Thanks.
That's what's going on there.
So we're going to turn to the lighter side of things. We always talk about like some dating trends, dating apps, that kind of stuff. And this one we've got, this is does Ozempic cause divorce? Other than, we have Ozempic face, Ozempic butt, and do we have Ozempic divorce, Rahul? Tell us more.
Yeah, so this is an MSN.com article that stands for the proposition that experts warn that GLP-1 weight loss drugs like Ozempic, Wegovy, etc., may double divorce risk. This is because they see that this potentially mirroring divorce rate spikes after bariatric surgery that used to happen in the past. Swedish research on gastric band patients previously found that such individuals were twice as likely to divorce when they had similar social and lifestyle shifts potentially occurring among GLP-1 users as well. Again, we talk about divorce rates. So this article goes on to say, while U.S. divorce rates have declined overall, which could mean a lot of things, it just doesn't mean simply that people are not getting divorced as much. It just could be other things like people aren't getting married as much, etc. But nevertheless, it's sort of researchers say these drugs may still prompt relationship changes tied to newfound confidence and altered life priorities. So it's interesting because, again, getting very popular. your weight loss is more coincidental with, or more coincides more with broader life changes like increased social activity. You're going out more, you're going to the gym, you're going to hang out, you're going out, dancing, whatever the case is.
Feeling sassy.
And then you get in shape, and if your partner doesn't embrace these changes, then they're like, what am I doing with you? I'm no longer, I don't want to say it because we're on TV, but it's we're not aligned, fundamentally anymore, because it's the issue.
The original story that's referred to in MSN is from this, I don't know what this thing is, Unilad. Don't know who these guys are, but this story was written by Britt Jones and talks about this, like Rahul said, this Swedish study really about gastric bands. But they say, well, similarly, if it's this rapid weight loss, it's probably a similar situation. It's that whole number thing. You got married and you were both 7s or whatever. Oh, sorry. Okay. I'm sure you guys listening to those are all 10s. Okay. Sorry. All right. So you're both 10s, and then somebody gets chunky and they go down to like a 7, or let's say 6 or something. This is terrible, but this is the way it is. And the other person's like, geez, or maybe a better thing to say is let's make it 7. Everybody's a 7. Somebody goes down to a 5 because they're overweight. In the mind's eye of the person. They lose weight, and maybe in the meantime, the other person went down to maybe a 6. Who knows? Then they go up to like a 7, or then they do nice clothes and stuff. Now they're an 8, and they're like, what am I doing with this bum who's a 7? Next thing you know, you got trouble.
That's right. And then you go somewhere, you go to yoga, you go to the library, you're in the park jogging, and you meet a nice person who is also jogging, and you're like, you know what? X, Y, and Z is at home, drinking beer, watching college football, and I'm out here running, and this nice fellow is running next to me,
Yeah. We've had cases like, I had a real case where a lady and a guy used to sit around a lot. The husband and wife were married a long time, and she got into a fitness craze. She started, I remember one case involving pickleball that I won't get into now, where a lady got into pickleball, and then guess what? Started running around with another guy she met in the pickleball court. The husband didn't play. She played in a league. Watch out for those pickleball guys. They got sharp claws. They're going to come after you. Anyway, this situation was the lady started going outside all the time, and she got into kayaking and riding bikes and all this outdoor stuff on the weekend. And her husband had no interest in doing it. And so he just liked to watch football on Sunday. Well, she would go out and do the kayaking and the bike and all that, and finds out the neighbor husband is into this stuff too. Who knew? And it's totally platonic for like 2 years. And they bike together and they hike together and they go out in the kayaks together. And guess what happened? It got to be more than platonic. And then both couples end up getting divorced. By the way, next door neighbors. So that's a true story. So last but not least, we got an interesting story. Should a woman take her husband's last name when she gets married? I'm an old school guy. I like that. My first wife took my last name. She's kind of old school too. And when she got remarried, she took her new husband's last name. My current wife would not take my last name. Still a bone of contention, folks. But we're okay. We're hanging in there. She's also my law partner. So, should a woman take her husband's last name when she gets married? It's a hotly contested question, including this week. And this week was, this week, April. This study published by the Institute for Family Studies. We just thought this was real interesting. Lyman Stone, April 16th. This came right out. Including this week, a particular topic of conversation on X, the artist formerly known as Twitter. Pew Research Center suggests 80% of women, roughly, take their husband's last name. That's actually more, Rahul, than I would have thought of.
I do think so. Yeah, I agree. I do agree.
But I think we run in a certain urban circle with professional ladies who probably do it less because they like to have their name for professional reasons.
And it's name recognition. That's how they've been known their whole life. And so if you get married, they have to change their whole identity. And, I get it.
If you're known professionally by a certain last name, there's a certain brand recognition. So that I understand that angle. The debate over married names versus maiden names still rages. Online rages, they say. This is a story. Online, at least, but is not informed by data. Are couples in which the woman keeps her... So what they're saying is, online, this seems like it's a 50-50 toss-up. That there's a raging debate. But they're saying in reality, what's really going on is most people are taking the husband's last name. And here's the interesting thing. Are couples in which the woman keeps her maiden name or chooses to hyphenate systematically different from couples who share the husband's surname? Well, they've done some research. Pew's 2023 survey, which asked about surnames and other family values, Second, the state of Texas public divorce data files include both spouses' surnames in 16 and 17. So, okay, admittedly limited data set, people, making it possible to look at divorce among couples who shared a last name before divorce versus didn't share a last name or had a hyphenated. The overall finding from these two surveys is simple. This is me quoting the story. Spouses who don't share a surname, that's your last name, divorce at a 50% higher rate than those who do share a last name. Their divorces come 30% earlier in their marriages. These huge effects reflect large selection biases, since who chooses to share a surname in marriage is not remotely random. We can't say these effects are entirely or mostly causal. That's important. It's correlation, but we don't know that it's causal, that it's causing it.
Yeah, correlation does not indicate causation, as they say.
Yeah. Not casual, by the way, causal.
Causal, yeah. Casual. It's a casual relationship, not a causal relationship.
So they're admitting, hey, we're not saying one causes the other. We're saying there is a correlation, or we're seeing some connection. There are some, and remember, folks, there are a lot of stories in the press that are really these correlation stories, and you have to be a critical thinker to realize, okay, this doesn't mean one is going to make the other happen or cause the other to happen. You have to think about the connection. There are some reasons to believe surname sharing might have some modest causal effects. Does taking husband's last name say anything notable about a woman? Okay, here we go. Don't at me, as the kids say. Okay, I'm just relating the story. As it turns out, it does. For the analyses, they focused on women because Pew did not ask husbands what their wives did. So they had these stats, and they listed as like 82% of all marriages, they kept maiden name. Hyphenated is a very small percentage. Overall, age groups, 82% take husband's name, 12% keep maiden name, 6% hyphenated or some other variation. And then the ages are interesting and kind of as you might expect. The younger the age range, 18 to 29, it's less take the husband's name, a little bit more maiden name, a little bit more hyphenated. And then 30 to 49, a little less, 50 to 64 less, and 65 plus, 90% take husband's name, 7%. I won't bore you. You get the idea. College graduates, I'm not surprised, tend to take last names at a lower rate and do hyphenated and last names at a lower rate. As you go lower in education, their rate of taking the husband's name goes up by a modest amount. There's a racial disparity. There's a conservative to liberal disparity, which I don't think surprises anybody. Conservatives, 92% take last name versus liberal people identify as liberals, 70% take last name. And there's these interesting differences in naming norms by politics, age, and race, as I'm mentioning. So, women who take their husband's last name have less positive views on divorce. Couples who share a name tend to stick together longer. There's a couple studies they reference here. And so we'll have the link to this published in the show. You can read the stats and everything for yourself. But it's just kind of interesting that they found this correlation and that couples who share a last name most likely have lower divorce rates overall. And they show, this is Texas, perhaps 75 to 80% of Texas couples share the last name of the husband. Only 64% of Texas divorces have a shared last name, indicating there's a lower number there. So interesting story. Check it out. There's a lot more here. There's a ton of stats in this story. Just shows you that there's some kind of interesting stuff going on out there with this. The other thing I thought was interesting was if you would have just asked me and Rahul, I bet Rahul thinks the same way, how many women these days take the husband's last name, I would have thought it was a lot less than 80%.
80, I thought it would be less than, like maybe it would be around 50-50.
I would have thought 60, 50, something. Yeah, but that's, of course, our own personal experiences and biases.
And the people we see on a day-to-day basis. Right.
People we know in our world. So, yeah, interesting. So, anyway, thanks a lot for that. That's it for the show. For Rahul, and I, that's it. But want to tell you a couple of things. Remember, STG Divorce Law, we represent smart, successful people getting divorced in Chicagoland. We do prenups, postnups like we talked about. We do divorce consultations. We do mediations, collaborative law, and we deal with everything related to divorce. We're here to help. If we can't help you, we know a great lawyer who can across the country. Check us out. We are happy to give referrals. And remember, planning ahead is crucial. You want to be that smart person getting divorced, and that means talking to an attorney early when you start thinking about it. Before you say the D word, talk to STG Divorce Law. We're at stglawfirm.com. Rahul, how can folks find you online?
You can find me on LinkedIn or on Instagram at Chicago Divorce.
You can find me at Rayford Palmer, at Rayford Palmer on X, formerly known as Twitter and Instagram, and easy to Google us online at STG Divorce Law and using our names. So check out my book, I Just Want This Done. 9,000 copies sold. It's a huge hit. As a nonfiction book, that's an epic amount of sales for even a book traditionally published, and this is published by my own company. I spill all the tea in the book. Still a bestseller after 5 years of publication. Check it out. And also get ready for my new book, I Just Want to Know, for those who are contemplating divorce and want to try to think if they should stay or go and try to save their marriage. It's all in there. It's coming soon. And next week, we'll be talking about more exciting stuff. We'll have divorce news. We'll have celeb information and all the stuff you love about our show. Please review the show. Give us reviews on all your favorite podcast platforms and especially YouTube and Apple Podcasts. That way, we know you like the show. We want to do right by you. Please comment, like, and share. Tell your friends and family members this show is not just another boring divorce lawyer podcast. Thanks very much. We're signing off. I'm Rafe Palmer, and that's Rahul Iyer. Have a great day.